King Edward III is noted for his military success and for restoring royal authority after the disastrous and unorthodox reign of his father, Edward II. His declaration of the 100 Years' War was the medieval equivalent of hitting reply all on an email chain, an action with far-reaching consequences. Edward III transformed the Kingdom of England into one of the most formidable military powers in Europe. His 50-year reign was one of the longest in English history and saw vital developments in legislation and government, in particular the evolution of the English Parliament as well as the ravages of the Black Death. But let us start from his birth. Early life. Edward III's journey began on November 13, 1312, as the eldest son born to King Edward II of England and Isabella of France. From his earliest years, he was surrounded by the intrigue and turbulence of royal politics, his upbringing shaped by the power struggles within the English court. The young prince's childhood was marked by the shadow of his father's reign, which was marred by internal strife and external threats. Edward II's struggles to maintain control over his kingdom deeply influenced Edward III's upbringing, exposing him to the complexities of governance and the fragility of royal authority. Amidst the backdrop of political unrest, Edward III received an education befitting a future monarch, honing his skills in diplomacy, warfare, and statecraft. His mother, Isabella of France, played a significant role in his early years, instilling in him a sense of duty and ambition. However, Edward's formative years were not without challenges. The strained relationship between his parents, coupled with his father's controversial rule, cast a shadow over his upbringing, shaping his understanding of power dynamics and the responsibilities of kingship. As he matured, Edward III became increasingly aware of the expectations placed upon him as the heir to the throne. The complexities of court politics and the looming specter of succession weighed heavily on his shoulders, preparing him for the trials and tribulations that lay ahead. Edward was crowned at age 14 after his father was deposed by his mother, Isabella of France, and her lover Roger Mortimer. Consolidation of power. As Edward III ascended to the throne at the tender age of 14, England found itself at a crossroads, grappling with the aftermath of his father's tumultuous reign. The young monarch faced the daunting task of restoring stability and asserting his authority in a kingdom plagued by political intrigue and external threats. Despite his youth, Edward III wasted no time in asserting his control and asserting his independence from the influence of his mother, Isabella of France, and her consort, Roger Mortimer. In a bold move, he orchestrated a successful coup d'état in 1330, effectively removing Mortimer from power and establishing himself as the undisputed ruler of England. At just 17, Edward took charge by overthrowing Mortimer, who was basically running the show in England. With Mortimer's removal, Edward III embarked on a concerted effort to consolidate his power and solidify his position as king. Then, after a successful fight in Scotland, he said, "Hey, I should be king of France too." This kicked off the 100 Years' War. Despite some early bumps, England did really well in the first part of the war, which they nicknamed the Edwardian War. Big wins at Crécy and Poitiers meant England got lots of new land in the Treaty of Bretigny, and Edward dropped his claim to the French throne. He surrounded himself with trusted advisors and loyal supporters, reshaping the royal court to reflect his vision for the future of the kingdom. The young king's early years on the throne were marked by a series of strategic maneuvers aimed at centralizing authority and curbing the influence of powerful nobles. He initiated reforms to strengthen royal control over finances, justice, and military affairs, asserting the supremacy of the crown over the feudal aristocracy. Edward III's commitment to consolidating power extended beyond the domestic realm as he sought to expand England's influence on the European stage. Through strategic alliances and military campaigns, he aimed to position England as a dominant force in continental politics, laying the groundwork for future conquests and territorial expansion. Military campaigns. Edward III's reign was marked by his ambition to expand English influence abroad, most notably through his assertion of claim to the French throne, igniting what became known as the 100 Years' War. This conflict, stretching across generations, reshaped the political landscape of Europe and defined Edward's legacy as a warrior king. At the age of 17, Edward demonstrated his assertiveness by leading a successful coup against Mortimer, consolidating his power and initiating his personal rule. Buoyed by his early triumphs, Edward turned his attention to Scotland, where he asserted his military prowess in a series of campaigns. However, Edward's ambitions transcended the borders of his own kingdom. In a bold move, he laid claim to the French crown, sparking a protracted conflict with the Valois dynasty. This audacious assertion of power set the stage for a century-long struggle for dominance in Western Europe. The early years of the 100 Years' War were characterized by English successes, particularly during what historians later dubbed the Edwardian War. Notable victories at battles such as Crécy and Poitiers showcased Edward's military acumen and bolstered England's position on the continent. Despite facing initial setbacks and challenges, Edward III's strategic vision and leadership enabled England to make significant territorial gains in France. The Treaty of Bretigny, negotiated in the aftermath of these victories, secured favorable terms for England, granting them extensive land holdings and concessions. Edward's decision to renounce his claim to the French throne in the Treaty of Bretigny marked a strategic maneuver aimed at consolidating English control over newly acquired territories while ensuring a degree of diplomatic stability in the region. However, the 100 Years' War would prove to be a protracted and costly conflict, fraught with challenges and setbacks for both England and France. Edward's later years were marked by international tensions and domestic unrest as the war dragged on and strained the resources of both nations. Legislative and governmental developments. During Edward III's reign, not only did he fight battles, but he also worked on making laws and running the country better. This was a time of change and progress in how England was governed. One of the big things Edward did was to make the English Parliament stronger and more important. Parliament is like a big meeting where important decisions are made, and Edward wanted more people to be involved in these decisions. He called together what's known as the Model Parliament in 1295, which was a big deal because it included people from different parts of society, like the nobles, clergy, and commoners. This helped to give everyone a voice in how the country was run. Under Edward III's rule, Parliament became more organized and powerful. It met regularly to discuss laws, taxes, and other important matters. This was a big change from before when the king had more control over everything. Edward also worked on making the government run smoother. He set up better systems for collecting taxes and managing finances, which helped to make sure the country had enough money to function properly. He also made changes to the legal system to make it fairer and more efficient. Overall, Edward III's efforts to strengthen Parliament and improve governance laid the groundwork for a more stable and prosperous England. His legacy as a reformer and legislator continues to shape the way we think about government and democracy today. Central to Edward III's policy was reliance on the higher nobility for purposes of war and administration. While Edward II had regularly been in conflict with a great portion of his peerage, his son successfully created a spirit of camaraderie between himself and his greatest subjects. Both Edward I and Edward II had been limited in their policy towards the nobility, allowing the creation of few new peerages during the 60 years preceding Edward III's reign. Edward III reversed this trend when, in 1337, as a preparation for the imminent war, he created 6 new earls on the same day. Legacy of King Edward III. After his death, Edward III left behind a legacy that echoed through the corridors of history, shaping the future of England and influencing the course of European affairs. His reign, spanning 50 years, was a time of significant change and transformation, leaving an indelible mark on the medieval world. Edward's legacy as a warrior king and skilled military strategist endures, with his leadership during the 100 Years' War earning him a place among England's most celebrated monarchs. His bold assertion of claim to the French throne set the stage for a century-long conflict, reshaping the political landscape of Europe and defining the relationship between England and France for generations to come. Beyond his military exploits, Edward III's reign witnessed vital developments in legislation and governance, laying the groundwork for England's parliamentary system. His commitment to parliamentary principles fostered greater cooperation between the monarchy and the nobility, paving the way for more effective governance and legislative decision-making. Despite the challenges and controversies of his reign, Edward III is remembered as a transformative figure in English history, credited with strengthening royal authority and consolidating England's position as a dominant force in European politics. His reign saw advancements in administrative structures and legal reforms, contributing to the stability and prosperity of the realm. However, Edward's legacy is not without its complexities and contradictions. While he is celebrated for his military successes and legislative achievements, his later years were marked by international failure and domestic strife. His inactivity and poor health contributed to England's struggles in the later stages of the 100 Years' War, tarnishing his reputation in the eyes of some historians. That's all for today, folks. If you enjoyed watching this video, please hit that like button and subscribe the channel for more videos. We will see you in the next one.